All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our June the 1st, 2026 meeting of the Media Education Lab. This is our monthly meetup for the Media Ed Club. My name is Wes Fryer, and today's topic is vibe coding your feed. And if Renee, you don't mind admitting some folks as they come in, we'll have a few more coming. Um, we are a very eclectic group that gathers here, and what I would love to encourage you to do now, as we have more people joining as well, is use our chat. So if you want to go ahead and open up the chat, let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and if you want to tell us what your favorite channels for media are, and those can be mainstream channels. Maybe you're a Paramount Plus, addict. Maybe you subscribe to YouTube Premium because you just love watching YouTube. But maybe you're also using some different social media channels and different apps that you're using for media. And I'm not today just talking about news, although news is really important, and I'll be showing you examples of vibe coded news platforms, but media more generally. News is certainly, in the media, but there are so many different forms of media that we consume today. And what we're going to really explore is how we live in a time where we actually have an opportunity, if we want to make our own apps, to create our own solutions, to be able to say, oh, well, I really like this and this. I wonder if I could make fill in the blank. And thanks to generative AI and platforms, especially like Claude, and that's the main one I've been coding with the past semester. It really is amazing. So today I'm going to share a few announcements. I'm going to kind of give you what I'm calling a media vibe 101 or media feed vibe coding 101, which is mainly some frames to think about, but then four different examples. And depending on how many folks we have, we could just stay in this one room and not go out to breakout rooms. But I'll definitely pause during an exploration time, because what I want to really challenge you to do is explore some of these and then provide some feedback. And I want to really encourage you to work on some of these yourself. All of us are not going to do this. Just the idea of coding is not something that, is something that energizes a lot of folks. But one of the pieces of news that I want to bring to you today is that we're living in a day where people without coding experiences are creating coding platforms and software that presents problems. It presents security challenges. It presents a whole host of things. Even the speed with which some companies and businesses are adopting new solutions that aren't thoroughly vetted and tested in the way that they would be in a traditional, sort of workflow or project management cycle. It presents a lot of challenges, but it also presents a lot of opportunities. And just before we were on, Renee and I were talking, and I believe that telling stories, like some of the stories I want to tell you today about ways we're using AI, is important. So let's start off by reminding everybody that we have a collaborative document. This is a Google Doc that has links to all of our past shows. Of course, you can get to these from the Media Education Lab, and I want to encourage that. But we've also got links to recordings. For instance, last session on May 4th, we talked about memes, warfare, and propaganda. And you can always access this through the Media Education Lab, and then you can click and go to the actual recording. And all of those are archived not only on the Media Education Lab's website, but we have playlists. And there is a playlist for our webinars and then also just for the Media Education Lab overall. So many of you may be watching this actually from a recording, but if you're here live, that's great. We're glad that you're here. Ooh, gosh, I guess I better fix that link. Um, hmm. I put the actual link in there. I had to do some server changes on my computer, and that was one thing I didn't realize I was going to need to redo there. All right, and then I've just closed my window. Isn't that lovely? This is the hazard of opening up your opening up things outside of your slideshow. Um, for next month, in July, I don't have that announced in that session. And if you have input, there's a couple different things that I'm trying to get for July and August. But I'm going to take the results of this form. This form I've shared for a number of months. It's an invitation for you to share where you share. And one of the reasons why I've wanted to do this was because I want to build some tools that can help us connect more with each other. The red boxes around these icons at the top are more open platforms. Now, YouTube doesn't let us see their algorithm. It's not an open source project, but whenever you have a YouTube playlist, there's a feed that it creates that we can subscribe to. Similarly, Blue Sky and Mastodon, which are also highlighted there, are open. They're connected to something called the Fediverse that I'm going to mention. But Facebook and LinkedIn are not. We can't legally scrape or grab those feeds, the posts and things that people share. And so anyway, if you are willing to share where you share, please fill out that form. I've put the link in there. I think we have 14 responses now. There's a lot more folks within our Media Education Lab community, certainly. This is a choice though, right? What are you comfortable sharing from a privacy standpoint? I'd made my personal Facebook page private, I don't know, last year or something like that. But there's places that I do share publicly, and I try to be thoughtful about that. So if you're interested, go ahead and please share where you share. Later today, in fact, I think Renee's just going to stay on Zoom here for a while. She is co-hosting again this Together We Rise community, and that is going to be continuing through the summer. At least I think there were two. I registered today, and there's two coming up in June, and that's been going on for a while. I'm really excited to announce this. TIP Teachers, which is Teachers for an Informed Public, out of the University of Washington. They have the Center for an Informed Public. Tonight, and I'm on Eastern time, so it'll be 9 p.m. for me. If you're on Pacific time at 6 p.m., they're going to host Mike Caulfield, who is the author of the SIFT Web Literacy Framework. I have been teaching about this since I learned about it in 2019 when I was up in Providence, Rhode Island at the then Summer Institute in Digital Literacy as it existed then. It's just been a transformative thing for me as far as web and media literacy. And Mike has been updating his SIFT framework to be AI ready. And what I've seen so far is basically get the meme, get the claim, get whatever it is you want to fact check into an AI and ask it to fact check. Mike had developed something called Deep Background, which is a super prompt. We talked about this probably 6 months ago, which was amazing. And it literally is like a coded prompt that follows best practices that fact checkers, professional fact checkers, will follow. And so anyway, you can go to tipteachers.org. The way to get the link, it's an actual Zoom link, and I'm not putting it in here because I think it may be their regular room that they don't just put out for the world. But if you want to email tipteachers@gmail.com, or I'll try during the breakout rooms because our chat is not archived online, and I can put the link to it here if you want to join. But it's late for me here on Eastern time, but this Tip Teachers group has really been great. And Mike works for the University of Washington, so they've got a wonderful opportunity to interact with him and have direct access. I've got links on the slide to both his Substack post about a SIFT rebuild and then a video that he did called Easter Bunny on Right, which is about a SIFT for AI framework. I'm also going to mention this. The Oral History Association, which I'm really into oral history, is going to have an online 3-day symposium focusing on trauma-informed interviewing. It's going to be June 23rd through the 25th. And if you're not a member, as I'm not a member, that's $100. If you're a student or you're retired, you can pay $50. But I really love oral history, media projects in which we interview along the lines of StoryCorps. And so this was something that caught my attention and I wanted to pass along as well. So what I'd like to do now is share a brief little overview for probably about 15 minutes and then jump into examples and invite you to explore. And I guess I can directly share this as well. If you want to, you're welcome to jump ahead in the slides. Here is the link to the slideshow if you haven't opened that up yet. And the examples page has about 5 different links that are vibe coded media platforms. And these were not created by Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, any, tech bro, oligarch. These are things that were created by folks who wanted to make something. And several of them were made by me. One of them was made by a New Zealander, a Kiwi that I actually just was contacted through Mastodon this last month. Another one was made by Mike Caulfield, which is a film or movie discovery engine. But let's talk about frames. Please, in the chat, tell me what your local newspaper was growing up. Was there a local newspaper that you had delivered to your house? Was there a newspaper that might still exist, but it is maybe in digital form? We're living here in Charlotte, North Carolina now, and so our newspaper, the Charlotte Observer, doesn't have a print edition every week that can be delivered. I think it can be delivered on the weekend, but then it's gone digital. Mine was the Manhattan Mercury. I grew up in Manhattan, Kansas, and a friend across the street had the paper route. And so when they would go out of town, I would sometimes substitute for them. The Bucks County Courier Times. Oh, Catherine was a delivery girl too. The Detroit News, Detroit Free Press, Northeastern Connecticut, the Journal Enquirer, the Hartford Courant is closed. Okay, the reason I start with this frame is because I believe local news is still so important. And I think that headlines today are unfortunately, and we'll talk about the reasons with the attention economy and just the whole way that advertising and the media landscape works. It really the local issues aren't amplified the way that they used to. I think that I'm appealing to nostalgia here on a couple levels. And please don't misunderstand me. I am not saying I think we should go back to the 1950s. It was wonderful in every way. It wasn't. I wasn't alive then, but there's a lot of things that were not great. But I do think more of a shared conception of truth, a higher value on journalism and the value that journalists brought to our society, and just the way in which we have, so much in common with the folks that are in our neighborhood, that are across the street and across town. And so I believe part of the reason we need to do this, and I'm issuing this not just as hey, you can add a new, app or link on your smartphone to get news. You can do that with these tools I'll share with you today. But this is a call for us to really look at how we together invent and co-create platforms that can recapture some of the good. And no, this is not an AI picture. And yes, this was staged in Oklahoma City with my lovely spouse. All right, next frame. Do you remember Google Reader? I'm going to be hearkening back for probably some of the older folks in the room, but when the web was young, I start to sound like this old guy, back in the 90s, we had a technology which is still here today called Real Simple Syndication, RSS, and Google had this wonderful platform which was an RSS reader, and there's still RSS readers today. In fact, your podcatcher, whatever you use to listen to podcasts, is subscribing via a technology called RSS to these different feeds that update. But boy, back in the day, at the really early days and during Web 2, it was a wonderful time of discovery, of connecting with others. And this is my last nostalgia frame. I can point to, I don't have pictures from the media, the digital media, the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy that I participated in person in 2019. But I could because there's so many different good connections that have happened in my life, friendships through the social web, and because of digital connections. And I personally want to recreate the opportunity to have those sorts of interactions with people. I don't really want to be in a global village and a single platform with everyone in the world, right? I don't have an interest in hanging out in close proximity with, let's say, people who are white supremacists or who are Nazis or who, think a lot of, think about who are extremists. I don't want to hang out with extreme terrorists. I don't have an interest in that. And as we've thought about a global village and the internet, I think that there were a lot of dreams that people had about everybody being all together in one big happy place. Well, that wasn't exactly Twitter, but it kind of was, and it didn't work out really well for many people. Now, I did connect with a lot of wonderful folks through Twitter, which is now X, but that has dramatically changed since the ownership changed. Anyway, this is just one of my frames as well. Thinking about the connections, the ways that I was not only able to meet new people and connect with them, but connect with their ideas, with people who are sharing things that I have an interest in, even if it was just a book, but it could be a podcast or, universal design for learning or, things that I hadn't heard of before. And oh my gosh, some of those things have really changed my life as a teacher and a practitioner. So that's positive. Let's go negative. Okay. Let's talk about tech outrage. I would not encourage you to play a John Oliver video out loud where there's lots of young children around. There's a lot of profanity. But he is, I think, a very savvy and prescient critic of our culture. And several weeks ago, he had a episode called AI Slop. If you're not familiar with it, I can't imagine that any of us haven't encountered some of this. We are seeing an explosion of AI slop, digital content made with generative artificial intelligence. The current English Wikipedia definition says it's perceived as lacking in effort, quality, or meaning. Now, it can also be really funny, and it can also, I don't know, it can have positive effects. My wife and I have golden retrievers. We love to watch golden retriever, videos and content. But oh my gosh, there's so much now that's AI slop. And as I got my hair cut this last week and talked to my hairstylist, AI came up and she'd mentioned how horrible it was. And I said, well, what do you mean? How are you, interacting with it? She said, oh, just all the slop out there. And so I don't know, but I suspect a lot of people's interactions with AI now are increasingly AI slop. And so this is a reason to have new media feeds and to not just let someone like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook decide, oh, you need to be presented with all this AI garbage. We have some limited ability to shape our feeds and train our feeds on platforms like Facebook, but on platforms that we create, that we make the algorithm, or that people we know or others that have a similar philosophy, we can have total control. Let's talk about the attention economy. It is crazy to see how advertising drives so much of the media landscape today. And if you're not familiar with Shoshana Zuboff's work, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, it's not just about us being the product of big tech. It's also about surveillance and the ways in which that surveillance state can be leveraged to some negative ends. I've had an opportunity to give 3 TEDx talks, and one of them, the second one, was about digital citizenship in the surveillance state. And at that time, I didn't know exactly here, this is what we need to do. But I knew that privacy was important and that surveillance was on the rise, and that depending on who would be in charge of the government, their ability to use, let's say, huge databases of collected information and video and pictures, it could become very surreal very quickly. So let's talk about a positive frame. And in our post for this session, as I have been doing for the last year, I've given you some recommended and then some optional media links, basically. Some of these are videos, some are podcasts. And this one was listed under the bottom section of recommended. But this is a quotation from Ethan Zuckerman. I should be giving a prize. Does anybody know what internet technology Ethan Zuckerman invented? Put it in the chat if you know what it is. Ethan said in this podcast that was the 100th episode of their reimagining the internet that advertising possibly was the original sin of the internet. Yes, Bill, you win. Ethan Zuckerman invented pop-up ads, and he's not completely proud of that because, that hasn't necessarily added positive value to a lot of our lives. But this reflection with, I think it's Mike Sugarman from MIT, and then Ethan was at MIT, and now he's at Amherst. This podcast was born out of COVID, basically, but it's continued, and their organization administration is attempting to reinvent platforms and digital infrastructure for our society. So their project is called the Initiative for Digital Public Infrastructure. And some of their members wrote this article back in 2023, which I had not read, called A Three-Legged Stool, a Manifesto for a Smaller, Denser Internet. And part of what they say in the executive summary is, quote, we envision a public sphere supported by three legs. Number one, many different platforms with a wide variety of scales and purposes. Two, the opportunity for users to navigate with a loyal client, meaning loyal to you as a user, that aggregates, cross-posts, and curates. And third, is supported by cross-cutting services rooted in interoperable data. And so add to this the Fediverse. And if you're not familiar with the Fediverse is underlying Mastodon. Now Blue Sky gives you the option to be federated, which means to interoperate with the Fediverse. Think about the early days of the internet when we had America Online and you had your CD that you put in your computer and wow, you were online, but you were in the America Online world. Email suddenly became federated. That meant you could communicate with someone on Hotmail or on what was the Bell South, or there's some different people that have these old email addresses, right? Like you've had your email for a while. The Fediverse is a response to big tech and centralized media that has a closed algorithm that we don't control, that we can't even see. The Fediverse is open source and it is a real vibrant community. And I think it's a real important frame for when we think about vibe coding. So let me toss this, and thank you. We got articles and things like that that are being put here into the chat as well. Please continue to do that. What are your favorite apps and websites you use now for news? I just captured 2 screenshots from my iPhone. Of the first 2, I have a folder called Learn. And so I love to use Flipboard. I've used it for years. I not only subscribe to channels that professional organizations, National Geographic and Reuters and people will create, but I can subscribe to my own lists that I have in Mastodon. Google News, Substack has become a real important place where I read. That's a whole topic in and of itself because I believe we need to respect folks that do not want to use AI tools. I also think that the position on Substack, and I almost always get a feedback comment when I mention it publicly, Substack has not deplatformed some very offensive folks that espouse white supremacy and a pro-Nazi agenda. And so it is an important discussion to decide what platform do you want to use and do you want to support. At this point, I find the value and the importance of Substack is such that I still use it. I don't use Twitter X anymore. I've abandoned that platform. But you might notice a couple things there on that middle graphic that you may not have heard of before. I'm going to show you Perceptive News, which is a vibe coded with Claude using a Gemini AI backend website that lets you have an interview with its chatbot to onboard and tell it what it is that you are interested in. And then it creates a custom feed and it lets you manage that feed. There's 2 other projects that I'll mention that I've created. One's called PodCommons and the other is called News with Wes. I have Verity News, which we talked about back in April here on the Media Ed Club. AP News, my local library, lets me subscribe to Hoopla and Libby. This is like a dashboard of news. And so what I want to challenge you to think about is maybe in 6 months, maybe later this summer, you can have your own home button that's your customized media feed, your customized, doesn't have to be an app necessarily that's on the App Store for Apple or the Google Play Store. The 3 there in the middle are just homepage buttons to these websites, Perceptive News, News with Wes, and PodCommons. And so I just want us to challenge us to think not only about being these passive recipients of the news and not just active participants in that we're sharing the news, maybe commenting, maybe writing into our local news or interacting with an author, but also actually creating platforms and then inviting other people to use those platforms, give us feedback, and then maybe also just co-creating together. So here are the examples. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and show you briefly these examples. And then I think I will break us into two breakout rooms. We do have a few different AI record. I think we got about, 10 or 11 of us here. One of the things, and I will say this like I try to do every time, it scares many people when we say we're going to go to a breakout room because some people do not want to talk, and that is fine. We want to respect that. But I want to share with you my own testimony that getting to meet other media literacy advocates through the Media Education Lab has and continues to be a wonderful transformative experience for me because I learn so much from other people. We all learn more together. That's a mantra of the Media Education Lab. So I'm going to introduce these to you. And then I'm going to invite us to go into breakout rooms. And when we get there, to introduce yourself, explore one or more of these, and share some of your discoveries. And we could stay in one big room, but there's just more opportunity for us to talk if we're in a smaller group. So I'll go ahead as I introduce these and drop these links. So let me go ahead and show you Perceptive News first, and I'll drop this link into the chat. If you happen to be on two windows or whatever, you want to click and go there. I want to first tell you who this comes from. And so this comes to us from Dave Moskowitz, who I had not known about at all. And he contacted me through a Twitter message on Mastodon. Mastodon is not as popular as some other platforms today. And one of the things that's actually positive about that is there's just not as much um, there's not as much garbage on there. I mean, that doesn't mean people can't create all kinds of things, but it was a direct message, and I'll have to scroll down through my messages that he sent me a couple weekends ago. Um, and it was basically saying, hey, you are interested in reclaiming our news feeds. You should check out my project that I did here. And so this is the conversation. All right. Now you can't see this publicly because Dave has sent this to me, but he says, hey, check out Perceptive News. And that's what I want to show you. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll show it to you as I see it now, and then I'll briefly show you the onboarding. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And if you don't use a password manager today, you need to. We should probably do a session on that because every password you use on every website needs to be different and it needs to be long and complex. So I use one password. So I am now logged in to Perceptive News. I have already onboarded on the site. And so it is showing me things that have come up in the last 24 hours that meet my interests. And I can add specific news sources. I can tell it more about my interests. I can basically do some things that would shape my feed. And here, let's do this one. New York Times. Now, these are tagged and they have a score, but they immediately just go to that article. And through my school, and I'm not logged in there, I have a New York Times subscription. Some of these might be paywalled. They're going to be a lot of different news sources, but the onboarding that you do when you join ends up defining what you see as your as the news. And so let me show you what the onboarding looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come here, but I'm going to choose to open this in a private window. I'm using a web browser, by the way, called Vivaldi. I've been using this for about, I guess, 6 months. It's a European browser that's privacy focused. It uses Start Page as its search page, which is a Google-based page, but it's not a tracking one. Okay, so when I click sign up, I go ahead and fill in my information. Now, uh, I'm going to do a little trick here, and I'm going to put a plus and a word after the prefix of my Gmail account. What that does is it Does not, I don't have to create a new email account, but most websites, including Substack, but many will then let you um, use that as a different, it sees it as a new account. So rather than having to create a new account when you want to, create a secondary account. I'm not going to completely onboard. This actually does take, oh great, now we get to, I'm going to take this off the screen so you don't have to see this. This does cost Dave about 15 cents to onboard new people. And so one of the things that you can do as you vibe code is you can create what's called an API key. And that API key for Gemini or for ChatGPT or Claude allows you to create a program that actually uses AI. And so that means that you can, have it do things. In the case of PodCommons, um, the website, here we go, confirm your Perceptive News account. All right, so I'll show you this. Um, Here's my little email I got. Okay, confirm your Perceptive News account. I'm going to say confirm my email. So I'm just going to actually copy this link address and now I'm going to paste it here into my private window. And what this should do is it should confirm my account and then it should let me onboard. Yay. Okay. Basically, what I'm talking about is development that not only coding with AI, but coding so that you use the AI in your program. And that is what Perceptive News does. Dave created it as I have with Claude as the AI assistant, but he is using an API key with Google's Gemini, and the cost is pretty small, but he said it's about 15 cents per user. Okay, so what topics matter to you? I'm gonna say sports, soccer. These aren't actually my interests. Let's say rugby, and then let's say golf. Okay, I'm actually not a very big sports guy, but I'm gonna say that I am. Okay, now that's interesting. It is going to continue this interview with me. So it's going to start with soccer. What interests you? And so I could say UK football, okay, or soccer or whatever. But it's going to go through this interaction. And I don't know if you've had this happen with AI, but sometimes you have to stop it asking questions like I'm done. You don't have to go through this for 5 minutes. You could do a pretty quick interview. But this is how you onboard with Perceptive News. And then once you've onboarded, like I said, you can go back and change. You can select specific sources that you want to use. But that's it. That's Perceptive News. Okay, I've got to make sure I don't take too much time here. Let me show you PodCommons. All right, this is the project I am most proud of in my entire life for podcasting. And what this has is, I'm an administrator for it. So it has taken the 406 podcasts that I subscribe to, and it has put them in a public web page that anybody can use. You don't have to actually join and be logged in. I'll show this to you in a private window in order to see the content. And I have this running as a subdomain on my West Friar account. So it's just podcast.westfriar. So in the Discover tab, it's using an algorithm, and I have created the algorithm. I have said prioritize things that I like or that I've made. And that's what I want to show people. But it also has a chronological feed. So if you click latest, this is just the latest podcast, and this updates, I think, every 4 hours. And so it goes out, grabs the new feeds, puts them in here. And so this is just chronological. This isn't sorted, in any way. I have a chance as the administrator to pick things. And so one of the things that I picked was this tech policy press called The Fight for Civil Rights in the Age of AI. And so I can directly play it. And I use this on my phone primarily. I don't use this on my laptop, but you can. I can play it right here. And I'm not probably sharing audio, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. But then I can also click here to see the original podcast. And if you're not following, by the way, Tech Policy Press, absolutely one of my favorite podcasts and has so much relevance to things that we talk about in the media literacy world. When I'm logged in here, I can also interact with this episode. And so I'll go over here to admin picks and go ahead and select it. So you can see that I have liked it. I've also made it an admin pick, but it also says, why is it recommended? And so this is where I'm trying to provide some algorithmic transparency. Why was this recommended, Wes? Well, number one, it was admin featured. That's the number one reason. But it also is a topic match for me, and it's less so for these other things. But being able to have, yeah, thank you for the video. In the about page, actually, it gives you an update. And feel free to join this. This is open. You do need a Google account to log in, but you can join. And so this is trying to have a tool for myself that can help with my own personal discovery, but also support curated sharing, advocating for the open web. This is the little video introduction that I did. And this kind of gives you a summary of what it can do. But as I hope that as this community will grow, and other people will interact, we can have discussions. And I love this. This is lucky, right? Remember when Google, they still have that where you just get lucky? So out of all 400 feeds, let me just get lucky. Hey, there's AI at NASA. From Houston, we have a podcast. All right, cool. And if I want to, I can add that to my listening queue. And this is really important because you find podcasts, but you don't have time to listen to them. So there's a listening queue, and it will pick up where you left off on the same device. Anyway, this is in its 1.0 version, but I have shared it on GitHub. So if you would like, you can absolutely download the source code from GitHub, and I would recommend using Claude to help you. But Claude can help you set this up yourself on Firebase and Google's platforms, and there's details as far as what this uses. But this is an openly shared, giving it away. I'm not making money on that. But I'm so proud of this. I'm excited about this. And then podcasts that I like do the EdTech Situation Room. My wife and I have a podcast about being empty nesters. All those things are up there too. So I've tried to give that priority. But this is an example of a media feed, a platform, which I've been using basically every day for the last month or so. And it's something that I would not have ever been able to do without the vibe coding assistance of these AI tools. So I'll take a little bit less time on these other ones. This is one that I created before this called News with Wes. I like to use Flipboard. So every time I flip a article into Flipboard, it automatically takes this feed. And you can see there was some of the research that I was doing for this webinar, that has some articles here. But anyway, you can get this in Flipboard. I write a bunch of blogs, and so I have those. I like to cook, and so I share recipes. I have video updates that I share sometimes. So this is a single HTML page, but it is being able to pull all of this from the internet because of open feeds. And again, this is on GitHub. The About page will tell you, oh, that's the wrong one. Maybe I clicked the wrong one. Yeah, news. The About page will give you a summary of the project. That's in version 3.0. But this one just basically uses JavaScript and HTML. And it's not using AI. It's not using an actual database. It's using PHP. And so that was a easier project to do. The last one I'll show, and this is sort of in my progress of learning, I call it Federated Reader. You can see that it has over 57,000 posts. This is a bot. And what this does is it takes the newsletters that I subscribe to in my email, and it creates a feed in Mastodon so that anybody can see these. And I don't know about you, but I don't really like reading the news in my email program. And so by taking these links out of email and by putting them into an open platform like Mastodon, I am able to not only see them there in Mastodon, I can see them in Flipboard, and I'm able to I don't have an image of this, but it's like Dumbledore in the sixth Harry Potter movie when he's in that island, they're having to get that Horcrux, and he's like spinning all around the fire and these channels. Like I kind of think of information feeds that way. Wouldn't it be great if we could take these channels, like take my friends or take the colleagues or the mentors that I have, the trusted voices I have, let me funnel those in to be able and repurpose and redirect those feeds. And so that's what this Federated Reader Bot was doing. If you're not familiar with GitHub, until I entered into my vibe coding journey a year or so ago, I did not have a GitHub. I have about 15 projects now in varying levels of work. But you can, view these, check these out. You don't have to make your projects public. You can, keep them a secret. But I want to openly share these and learn with other people. And I want to encourage other people to do this as well. All right. Okay. Last one. And I'm going to give you some time to explore and I'm going to open up breakout rooms. This one is not news related. This is from Mike Caulfield and this is plot.fyi. It's a film discovery engine that he has created. And I wonder, this may be the one that everyone wants to play with. There's no login, but somebody in the chat, tell me a name of a movie. I'll do Star Wars, but I'm going to do another one too. Mike has coded this. I'm going to guess with Claude, but I don't know. Notice it just pulled up Star Wars 1977 for episode 4. But it's going to show top 30 films which are similar in terms of plot to that movie. Somebody give us another movie. Um,
When
all
Harry
right, there we
met
go. Room with a view.
Sally.
Okay, there we go. All right. So I love Joe versus the volcano. It's one of my favorites. Because hey, if you like this movie, maybe you'll like this. I don't know this one. Okay, is it just Room with a View? I don't know this one. Um, I don't know if you remember the early days of Netflix when you could connect to friends and see what was in their queue. This is when we were still getting mailed DVDs before they streamed. I mean, that was so cool to be able to find out what other people, that you knew were watching, and we discovered, some films and movies that way. Anyway, this is cool. This is a vibe coded platform. This is a media discovery tool. And this is something that Mike Caulfield just announced a couple of days ago on his Substack, The End of the Argument, introducing Plotwise, the slightly weird film explorer. And he hadn't even really planned to make it public, but got a positive response from people and decided to do that. So what I am going to do now is going to open up some breakout rooms and I am going to create 2 breakout rooms. I will randomly let our algorithm assign us. And like I said, please stay. Just because it's good. Well, man, we are a small group. Oh well, we're going to do it anyway. I'll try to jump into whatever room looks like it's the quietest. But please introduce yourself to the group. Take a few minutes, explore. We have about 16 minutes left, so we'll take about 10 minutes or so to explore and come back and share a little bit, and then we'll be done. So please join the breakout room, and I will see you there. I'm going to pause the recording. I'm muted. How about unmuting? Yes, we solved all the problems. We're a smaller group than usual today, but and I was just in one breakout room, but I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Because truly, a short breakout in a Zoom room like this is not adequate to ingest and take in all of this, but also to have the time to, I think, play and reflect. So, anybody willing to share some thoughts? And we've turned the recording back on.
One of the things that I'm really interested in is, so I feel like I now got an orientation to vibe coding, but now I need to play more deeply. I need to understand it more deeply. I need to try to make something. And I'm thinking, what's the fastest way for me to do
Mhm.
that? And it's like to steal an idea from you, Wes, and
Absolutely, but it's
make
prompt
changes
sharing.
to it.
It's prompt sharing, and maybe that could be part of the next step. Would be sort of categorizing, because I mentioned in our breakout room, like I made a real simple timer for our web design final projects this year because I had a specific amount of time. I wanted it to do different things, use different names, but like that prompt could then be utilized by somebody else. But doing a simple HTML page like that, is like level 1. Level 2, like if we're talking about news or podcasts are great because the feeds are open and it's we can't I can't legally write code that scrapes Facebook or LinkedIn because that violates their terms of service. But podcasts are open. So anyway, we could get to something like that, perhaps, Renee, that would be a prompt. And even if it was just with a few podcasts or something like that, there would be an ability to create something that was taking these channels of information and then allowing you to sort of make your own interface.
Yeah. Yeah. One vibe coding thing that I was wondering about is could I vibe code a way for my email box to be less crowded?
So you can turn on in Google Labs. Do you know about the what is it? The CC Labs? Do you know that project for
Yeah.
Gmail? I have that one, and so it is. They've been slowly adding these kinds of features, like additional AI features. And I am very interested in the ability of perhaps Google to help out with that. This is one that you can just turn on, and it's called CC. It's an AI productivity agent. This is free, and it's in Gmail. I couldn't do this on our school account because they don't have this turned on, but on my personal account, and it gives me an email every day. Here's top of mind things to do. Here's FYIs. Here's your calendar. And it's just like, starting off the day.
Hmm.
And we can do things. This is something I was a little concerned about the danger of it because I have a script that runs on my Gmail account now, and it pulls out all of the newsletter subscriptions that I have. Now, hopefully, I'm happy with all those being shared because there have been some mistakes where it grabs something else and anyways, there's been some things that have happened. And so but we can do it. You can write a script for Google that runs on your account. And I'm sure there's definitely people experimenting with this, but that whole productivity thing, this is why Google has such an advantage over other companies because many of us have our lives already in Google and we're trusting Google with our calendar and our email and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
I'm noticing in the chat, Catherine and Randall, thank you so much for that. That idea of organizing the news content um, through Feedly,
uh-huh.
and Just Watch for film. That is really, and I do feel like, Catherine, I agree with you that the tool that you shared with us, Wes, that was pulling out all the content,
Plotly.
all the digital content. Yeah, that just seems really, really smart. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't know about Just Watch, a streaming media guide for movies, TV shows, and sports.
so this is also making recommendations, right?
Correct. And again, this is our media feed. This has struck me for a while, just getting a group of people together to say, hey, what you watching now? What are you watching on Netflix? What are you watching on YouTube? Having somebody recommend an influencer. Those things can be very, or because that's where we're filtering for each other, and that's where I'm going with part of this. Is I feel like, yes, the algorithms can filter, but it's also really powerful for us to filter for each other.
So, Wes, I have a question for you now because I'm thinking about doing some homework for this session.
Okay,
Uh,
great.
when I want to make a copy, I want to learn how to do what you did with your news. You took, you basically created something that strips off all the digital content you get on your email and it dumps it into a special place. I went to GitHub and I get here. Can I download this code and then could I go ask Claude to help me build my own version of this thing you have built?
I think so. The good news about this one is it doesn't have a back-end database. So Firebase is a back-end database that Google has that I use to power PodCommons, but this news does not. So I strongly suspect, and I would love it if you or others would do it. You can copy that link and put that into Claude and say, "Hi, Claude. I would like to make my own news feed with
Right,
my email. Can you help me do that?" And by
right.
copying the link, it can access all of that code. But I do want to caution everybody using this like with your live Gmail account presents challenges and hazards. the safest way to do this would be to set this up with another email account first,
Mhm.
but it just blows my mind that I'm even talking about any of this with y'all because yes, I've taken some coding classes in the past, and my Eagle project was what was it called? DBase 3 Plus Time and Talent Survey Aggregator back in 87, whatever. Like I've done some coding things, some geeky things, but that isn't the path I took in life, and I am not a really terminal script, coding coder. It's amazing to be able to do this, and it presents challenges, and we need to be careful. We need to talk about the security of this, and especially if we're going to publicly, share things. But Renee, you could create a news aggregator like that and not have it public. You could have it just running off your computer. And I do think the power of that, because that's taking information, I guess it's sort of transmediating maybe. I mean, you're
Right,
taking it out of
reformatting
your
it. Yep,
email, but then
yep.
you're making it more useful. You're having control over the UI, and rather than all the mess that's in email, oh look, there is a single image that represents the article, and the AI part with the pop.
Mobility is just less
Yes.
clicking.
Yes, you're channeling, you're taking those feeds. And I mean, I get goosebumps talking about that because I think that is really powerful. And like, yes, this is taking charge of our news feed. This is like, let's make our own newspaper. And as we do this together and we can teach each other how to do this, what can come out of that community? Some really great ideas.
Wow, cool. All right. Yeah.
Mariana put into the chat she uses The News, a newsletter in Brazil, and she was also checking out the plot.fyi and liked the premise. Yeah, it'd be nice to have it as an app. So, Mariana, you can do that as an app if you will just create a homepage link for it. So, well, thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you for coming today. This archived recording will be available on the Media Education Lab's website and on our YouTube channel. We are going to have sessions in July and August. However, because of a little different camp schedule that I have, I think the timing of our July session will change. But as long as you have signed up, you should receive notifications. And if you've got an idea about something you would like to talk about, to present, that's how we got the folks from Verity to present for us back in April. Please reach out and contact me wherever you happen to be in space or time. I hope you are having a wonderful start to your June, whether that's cold wintertime in down under in New Zealand and Australia and the Southern Hemisphere, South America, or you are here starting your summer. Be safe, be well, and we hope to see you next time on another episode, an edition of the Media Ed Club for the Media Education Lab.